Okay, so now we have the bones of the forearm, and here is the radius, and here is the ulna. Okay, now in the body, the radial head is always going to tuck in next to the proximal end of the ulna, and the ulnar head always tucks in at the distal end of the radius. Okay, and these two actually aren't from the same side, so they don't fit perfectly together, but you can get an idea of how these bones are fitting. Okay, now the radius is always on your thumb side. If you're kind of looking at your wrist, your ulna is always, your distal end of your ulna is always at your pinky side. Okay, so we're going to take them, after Pat gets his great shot here, we're going to take them apart and start looking at the radius individually. Okay, so you can see this beautiful disc-shaped portion of the radius, which is at its proximal end. That is the head of the radius, very distinctive. Okay, and then we have this bump here, which is the radial tuberosity. Okay, and the radial tuberosity is the location where the biceps brachii inserts on the forearm to give us our flexion at the elbow. Okay, as we go to the distal end of the radius, you can see that we have a little indentation, kind of a half moon or quarter moon indentation on the distal end of the radius. That is the ulnar notch. Okay, now one thing you need to remember, each bone, radius and ulna, has a notch. It's not named for the bone it's on, it's named for the bone that fits into it. Okay, so you have the ulnar notch on the radius because it's the ulna that fits into this space. And on the ulna, we'll see that we have a radial notch, and I'll show that to you in a moment. Okay, now the other landmark that you need to look at here is this extension of bone. This is the styloid process of the radius. And the ulna has a styloid process too, which we'll look at in a moment. Styloid means it looks kind of tooth-like. You can see that looks a little bit like a tooth, the way it's shaped. And you need to specifically on a quiz or on the lab practical say that it's the styloid process of the radius, of the ulna, of the temporal bone, since we have a styloid process on each one of those. I know it's irritating, but there it is. Okay? All right, so that's the radius, beautiful little bone. Now we're going to switch to the ulna. Okay, the ulna also very distinctive with this big C-shaped region on the bone. And this C-shaped region is the trochlear notch. Okay, the trochlear notch is surrounded by the coronoid process on one side, and that is the thinner, kind of pointier process next to the trochlear notch, and the olecranon process, which is the larger, bulkier process next to the trochlear notch. The olecranon process is what you can feel if you palpate the point of your elbow. Okay, that's what you feel is the olecranon process. Okay, as we look at the opposite side here, you can see that there's a small depression. Again, a little half-quarter moon shaped depression here at the proximal end of the ulna. This is the radial notch. So remember, it's named for the bone that fits into it. Okay, so not the bone it's on. So this is the radial notch. Okay, now as we go to the distal end of the bone, this small structure here is the head of the ulna, and extending next to the head we have the styloid process of the ulna. Okay, Now this particular, let's go anatomical position. Okay. Now we said that the radius had to fit in here. So we obviously can't have this bone like this. Okay, the trochlear notch has got to be pointing anteriorly. We can't have this bone like this. It's got to come over on this side. Okay, so this is going to have to be a left ulna. Okay, because we want the distal end to be on the pinky side. We want it to have its radial notch to interact with the radius, which is going to be over here, and the trochlear notch has to be anterior. So this would have to be a left. Okay, now I just want to point something out to you. We said that this ulna was a left, and remember a little while ago I had this plastic scapula out, and we said this was going to be a right. Okay, now there's a rumor going around that all of the plastic bones are lefts. That is obviously not the case, since I've just shown you one plastic bone that is a left and one plastic bone that is a right. Okay, so don't be fooled by that rumor. Okay, and also on the lab practical, they are not going to put the plastic bones out for the determination of left versus right. They're going to put real bones out, so you're going to need to know how to tell which one is which. Okay? Now I forgot to mention the humerus before, so I'm going to grab that one really quick. Okay? This one, the medial epicondyle has to be medial. The head also has to be medial. That's another good landmark. And then the olecranon fossa has to be posterior. Okay, so that would mean that this would have to be a right.